Alright, I am back with a Dragon Age The Veilguard video. The game is fully out now, and I figured it was time to circle back. I did my review a few days ago. Seems some people were sort of predisposed to not like the game at baseline, but I think that is starting to turn around now that the game is actually in people's hands. I am seeing generally very positive feedback about it online, other than the whole culture war. There's a non-binary character bullshit, like whatever. The actual game is very fun, I think, and not everyone may share that opinion, but I thought it was time to go back and revisit the tips article I wrote, because I can only really do a couple sentences per bullet point there, but in terms of larger explanation, I think I can kind of go into these points in more detail. And I know that not everyone who watches my videos reads my articles, so I figured this would be a good time to do that. I'll go through these 10 points that I had, and maybe I'll think of some on the way. But the first one I have is you will have more skill points than you think. You are not really locked into just one type of build here, because you are going to get kind of an insane amount of skill points by the end of this game. There are 50 levels. 50 levels is the cap. And so that's 50 skill points at baseline, but there are also a number of wolf statues. And if you solve a little puzzle, as in it will point in a direction and you got to go find a little mini wolf statue, all of those give you skill points too. So I think it's at least 60 skill points. So I really would not worry about, necessarily thinking you have to do only one thing. For instance, my rogue, I focused on poison necrotic blades, and I did specialize in that once I go through the tree. However, I had so many skill points by the end, I got to put a solid amount of points into archery stuff too. So I could do close range, I could do far away. It's not like if you pick one thing, you can't do any other style of play. You can pick only one specialization, which is like some additional bonus, really good moves in that particular category. Like, since I didn't specialize in archery, I'm missing some things, but that doesn't mean you still can't do well in other categories besides just the one thing that you thought you were going to start with. Next point is vendor shops. The main way you will loot gear in this game is there's like 140 chests scattered around. Some of them are really easy. You'll find them on your way during levels. Some of them are very hard to get to. They have a lot of, especially the mythic ones, which feature unique items. Those you have to either beat a big boss or solve a pretty hard puzzle. Other ones will be, locked behind some door you have to figure out, or up on some platform you have to figure out. That's the main source of gear. However, this is a game about wanting to find multiple copies of gear, because every time you find a copy of a piece of gear, it will unlock the next perk there, in addition to, I think, giving it somewhat better stats. And a big way to do that is to find gear in vendor shops. And by vendor shops, I mean the main ones are through each of the factions. You have to rank up these factions. This is done by doing side quests for each faction. And by the end of the game, you should be able to have, top level unlocks for almost all of the factions. You don't have to focus on your own faction. I don't think that makes a difference. You might have a little higher standing to start with. I don't remember, but the more side quests you do, the more you will rank up. By rank 3 out of 4, you should have access to a lot of the, duplicates of kind of normal gear you get. Like, I was spending, a dozen hours trying to find a copy of my bow to unlock the next perk. And lo and behold, it was just for sale in one of the stores. So if you buy stuff there, and the stuff you buy there is not that expensive, if you're picking up gold, you should have a lot of gold to be able to spend on things like that. And another way to rank up rep is all of the little pieces of crap you pick up, where it's like exquisite jar or a mysterious coin. Like, all of that is like, it's essentially the equivalent of gold, because all it's good for is selling. But when you sell it at a specific vendor, that can give you hundreds of rep with that specific vendor. So if you're trying to focus on one, save all of your stuff and sell it at that one vendor. Never sell junk to like a random street vendor, because that's not going to help you at all. Next point, you can respec all the time. This is back to the skill tree, where This is not a game where this is a very RPG light game, which I think people will figure out pretty quickly. No penalty for respeccing, not just on your character, but also all of your companions, where I was frequently trying to mix and match different skills that align better with my build or that synergized with each other with some of my favorite companions. And you will have enough skill points in the end if you get them to kind of max loyalty rank or whatever to fully go down the paths of 2 different skills. And, they're only using 3 different skills in general. So you can change those around whenever you want. There's no cost, there's no gold cost, anything like that. So don't forget that you can do that. You can also re-specialize. So if you want, I could have gotten out of Poison Blades and gone into archery instead. The beginning makes it seem like you're kind of locked in to one particular thing, but you're not per class. You're not locked into one thing per class. You can't change classes, but you can bounce around between specializations. Match the right kind of primers and detonators. So this has a Anthem-like, I guess, primer and detonator system where some moves prime targets, other moves detonate targets, either your own moves or your companion moves, which you can, tell them to either prime or detonate something that you can activate or they can activate. The catch here, this took me a while to understand, which it's pretty basic, but I didn't really get it at first. It's not just the concept of primers and detonators in general. They have to be based on a certain effect. So if I apply the Sundered debuff, which I think it reduces defense. I don't remember. So if I apply a primer that is Sundered, I need a companion that has the ability to detonate a Sundered hero. If they're able to detonate an Overpowered hero, which is another debuff, that's not going to work. So you have to be very matchy-matchy with these. I think there's 2 or 3 different types of this. Maybe I think there's no more than 3. But when just because you see something detonates does not mean it's going to detonate the thing you want it to. So pay attention to that. You only see things detonate when it has the little AoE diamondy thing that shows up. Otherwise, you're not actually detonating anything. You're just having your companion do a damage move. A side note here, I've seen some people in reviews say that there's no point using moves that are not primers and detonators. I don't think that's true because a lot of the moves that do neither of those things, they kind of made them better in terms of just pure damage or pure, stacking debuffs. So friggin' the guy with the griffin, I forget his name. He has a move where the griffin just dives down and hits somebody. Not a primer, not a detonator. But if you upgrade, it does big damage and applies big bleed stacks. So that might be worth doing on its own if you're not doing a primer and detonator system. So I wouldn't rule those moves out just because they're not primers or detonators. All right, number 5 I have here. If combat is a slog, you are probably underleveled or undergeared. I've heard from some reviews that people think combat is too bullet spongy. There's not bullets, but you know what I mean. Enemies have too much health. It's too much of a slog to get through combat. Some of the time, this means you just shouldn't be in a fight. You will stumble upon bosses that are way higher than your level, and while it's not impossible to beat them, it's just going to be a giant pain in the ass, and it's probably not worth doing it until later. If you're fighting a boss that's 10 or 15 levels above you, if you do all your dodging and parrying and whatever, you can chip away at it for 25 minutes if you want, but I don't think that's worth it. If you don't have a healer, you could use all your potions. I would circle back around and do that later. There's no real disadvantage to doing that. At the end of questline, sometimes oh, you're breezing through a questline. Oh, there's a level 40 enemy here at the end of this, and you're just screwed even though the rest of the quest is easy. That happens, but you come back later. In terms of general moment-to-moment fighting, if you're playing on any of the reasonable difficulties, it should not feel too overwhelming to kill kind of normal enemies. And if you're not killing normal enemies, you kind of need to look at your build. Do you have enough barrier penetration? Do you have enough armor penetration? Do you have enough synergistic, teammate actions? Do you have enough upgraded gear on your character? Does the gear and its perks synergize with your build to some extent? If you're just kind of throwing whatever your top piece of gear is at the wall and there's no synergy and you're using random companion skills and not doing primers and detonators and things, yeah, it's not going to feel good because you do need some level of cohesion to start making combat feel good. And this took a while because to do this, you do need to kind of unlock more gear, unlock more skills and skill points. But I would say the middle 30, 35 hours of the game, I was really cooking. By the end, like the last 15, 20 hours, I was so overpowered. I was like, this is kind of a joke now. And like, I could have upped difficulty, but again, this is a review period. I'm not looking to just double the time of all my combat or anything. But if it feels like a slog, reevaluate your build, your level, and if not, it just gets better over time. Number 6, don't go nuts over some chests that feel like you can't get them. There will, I'd say like 5% of chests maybe are pretty much unreachable in certain instances where, yes, sometimes you just have to solve a puzzle that is, it has a solution you weren't thinking about. And when you find it, it's gratifying and you get the thing. Sometimes from where you are, the chest is just not gettable. Either you will have to just keep progressing through the level, and the way level design is, like, sometimes you might loop back around to that chest is like up on a cliff that you're not really supposed to get to. Other times you may need to be doing a specific quest that unlocks some specific area here in order to get to that chest. So don't go too insane over this. I went insane over some of these chests until I realized that maybe it just wasn't my time to get them. This does not happen with most chests, so definitely try to do a lot of the puzzles, but know that you will run into this at least sometimes. In terms of story stuff, no spoilers, but I would keep going to the lighthouse to have a lot of some of the better character moments. Pretty much when you do any quests and like any amount of time seems to progress, you can go back to the lighthouse and talk to your different teammates. It's not just like the old system of like, go to each individual teammate, check in with them, go to the next teammate. A lot of this stuff ends up being, as your team forms, it will be conversations between like multiple teammates and you, and like different scenarios that are, kind of interesting or funny. And it's more than I would say we've seen from other kind of companion-based games a lot of the time, where there's a lot of interaction between teammates. And like, yes, not all of the writing is amazing for every one of these sequences, but if you're trying to like kind of get to know your team more, if you go back and there's this like little speech bubble with an exclamation point or speech bubble with a clock in it, the clock means if you come back later, that conversation won't be there. So definitely do those. If it's just an individual exclamation mark by itself, that means they'll give you a quest, which, you'll obviously talk to them on the quest too. But yeah, keep going back. There's a lot of moments like that I think are worth seeing. This one's easy. Pick up everything. There will be glittering crap all over the ground at all times. It's kind of annoying. I don't really love having to pick up a million things in like every room, but like you're going to need it if you want to make significant progression with upgrading your gear. You need these materials to rank up vendors. You need these materials to rank up your gear smithing dude in the lighthouse, and then you need the materials to actually spend on each individual item to level it up. So if you don't pick a lot of stuff up, you're going to run dry and you're not going to be able to get a lot of these upgrades. So pick all the crap up. Not my favorite system, but you need to do it. One thing related to this, one thing you don't need materials for that is easy to overlook is enchanting. As you level up your upgrade dude at the lighthouse, you will unlock more and more, just sort of, it's like a little bonus perk. So like you can put in 20% extra damage against armor on your sword, or you can put in, 20% resistance against fire on your chest or whatever. And then these get more and more kind of involved over time. And you can enchant every piece of gear, including your jewelry that you have on. And you add all these up, and it's a pretty significant power boost for your character. When you do this, so this doesn't cost any money, and you can change it at any time. You also need to remember that if you're swapping out gear, which you will frequently do, the enchantment does not swap, so you will have to go back to the guy and enchant it again. You can take the old enchantment off the old thing and put it on your new thing. They're not like permanent, but you need to remember to do that, and I frequently forgot, so do that. Last one is very obvious for BioWare game. Do the loyalty quests if you care about the well-being of your team at all. It is not any great surprise that if you do the full loyalty quest line for a teammate, not only will they like you more and get stronger, in this case, they literally get stronger in a very interesting way at the end of their quest. But also, as we head into the more dangerous parts of the game, they will be more likely to not die during whatever happens. This is not, again, like a new BioWare thing, but If you care about everyone not dying or having a better chance of not dying, do the loyalty quests. They're also really interesting quests. I think they may not start out interesting, but by the time you get to the end of them, there's some really, really intense lore stuff. Like, even not knowing a ton about Dragon Age, I can tell how big these reveals are for like the larger state of the world. So those are my tips. Hopefully you can get something out of that. I hope you enjoy the game. If you don't enjoy the game, I get it. It doesn't do everything right. If you're not playing the game because of a woke storyline, I would not do that. I would, if it looks interesting enough to play, then I would play it, but whatever. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.